Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another weekly wrap up. And today we have 10 books to talk about, including 2 new 6-star reads. You got I can't even tell you how excited I am. Also, we have 1 3-star, but otherwise everything was 4 stars and above this last week. So I feel like I just had the freaking week from I don't know what else to say. Okay, it was amazing. I'm so excited to get into it. We got to talk a little business first and then we'll get going. So first up, we have 2 new patrons to celebrate, to welcome. Thank you so much, Carol Pitcher and Susie, for joining my Patreon. It means so much to me. There has been a little bit of turnover lately with Patreon, so when I see new signups come in, it's just like, we can keep going because some people just, they can only donate for so long, and that is absolutely understandable. I do the same thing with Patreons and channel memberships. Sometimes you got to rotate through, but every person, whether you are making a one-time support or you've been with me since the beginning, it means so much to me. It helps keep me going for sure. So thank you so much to Carol and Susie. I'm so happy to have you. And then we're going to dive right into this because I'm very excited for all the books we're going to talk about. First, we got to have a drink. Water of the day today. I've been doing a different water every day now. I think I've talked about this a little bit. But this one is peach strawberry lemonade. So it's a lemonade base packet, and then I put peach and raspberry syrup in here. Oopsie. And it tastes amazing. So let's go. So the first book that I finished was Mortal Skin, which is book 1 in the Folk trilogy. This one is Lily Mayne's first trilogy that is about the same characters, and it's not finished yet. But if you happen to stop by the interview that I had with Lily last week, me and Tiffany interviewed her. She was so sweet. Her accent is amazing. She was very shy but very kind to stop by for that interview. And we just gushed about monster fucking, and it was amazing. It was amazing. But I'd been holding off on this series mostly because I wanted it to be finished, and mostly because I didn't want to be finished with all of her books because this series is the only one I haven't read. But though this one has quite the cliffhanger, y'all. This one has a cliffhanger. I have the next book, Forgotten Vows, and from what Lily has even said herself, the second book has a happy for now. So you can read these 2 back to back, and then the third book is coming, but they are together and it'll be good by the end, which is good because the end of this book I was destroyed. And then I couldn't jump into the next one right away because I had to read A Court of Silver Flames and some other things I had to get to. So I was like, what do I do now with my life? But this is an Fae romance, and our hero Ash, he's been seeing the folk since he was very little. Him and his dad live on the edge of a forest. He has a stepmom as well, and he's seen the folk since he was little, and he's kind of thought he was making it up, but also he knows that they're there. And when he's 21, he finds out in a pretty dramatic fashion that he's actually a changeling. He's half Fae. I think he's half Fae. And his mother was Fae. And so he gets basically drug back to Faeland, and he gets ordered to by, she's called the Carlin, so kind of like a queen of the Fae, or part of them, I guess. I don't fully know that part. I'll just be honest. That's a me thing. Lily explains it all, but I was just I want the kissy parts of this book, which we definitely get, and they're beautiful. But he gets brought there, and there is the unseelie court, and there is just a lot of weirdness, lots of people watching him. There are apparently secrets about him that no one will explain to him, but he's supposed to figure out how to shed his mortal skin. That's what he's supposed to do. Doesn't know what a mortal skin is or how he's supposed to do it, but he gets put in this little cottage. He gets taken care of basically, but he's not allowed to leave. If he tries to leave, he's in extreme agony, and he must figure out how to shed his skin. And then there are the Carlin has 4 sons, and one of those sons, the youngest one, his name is Lonan, and he is her assassin, and he comes and watches Ash all the time, and they end up, like, this is a relationship between them. I don't want to ruin anything. But another part of it I really loved is that this cottage he gets given used to belong to kind of like a potion maker. It has a name in here, but basically it's a potion maker. And so because he's bored, Ash starts reading these like books on spell making and potion making, and he kind of starts to learn how to do that, which was really cool. There's some fun stuff. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really did. There was a couple things that like didn't make sense to me, but my friend Daniela, who is the one who was really pushing for this, although I will say too, 3 different people have put this one into my book rec form at different times, which, you know me well. Yes, this is a book you should recommend to me, but also I've owned it pretty much since it came out. I just, like I said, I was waiting for it. But thank you to everybody who recommended it. You know me well. I did really enjoy this. So yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was, hold on, a 3 on the spice scale. I like this too because Lonan was a virgin. So yeah, he was a virgin hero in this, and I really liked that aspect of it. But yeah, there is a cliffhanger, so have both books downloaded on KU or own both books, because when you finish this one, you're going to want to start it. And I got to tell you, again, I wish I could read Forgotten Vows right now. I will squeeze it in March sometime. I just couldn't do it right this second. But yeah, the trigger warning for this, though, is there is a death of parents. So Ash's dad and his stepmother are killed in the beginning of this book. That's one of the inciting incidents where the Fae is like, oh, look, your parents are gone. There's no reason for you to even, like, be here anymore. Come to the mortal world. So just be aware of that. It's not really, like, dwelt on, but it is a thing. So, all right, next I went a little bit wild because I was kind of in a historical romance mood, which you'll see with this one. I actually read a couple this week, which was awesome. And I had the arc for The Duchess Takes a Husband by Harper St. George sitting on my Kindle, and I just really wanted to read it. I have enjoyed the books in this series to varying degrees, but they all have this very compelling aspect to them. 2 of the 3 of the previous ones I read had aspects of feminism that I really do like, and how it was being explored. I feel like that's always what's going on in Gilded Age romances, though, and it's why I don't always love reading those. But I had really liked book 3, which was, is it the air skit? No, that's the first one. The air, something in the air. Either way, the third one about the brother Max I really liked that one. And the setup for this one is that this heroine, Camille, she was kind of the inciting incident. She was kind of the inciting incident for this whole series, where Camille was an American who, was coming to London, and she was like forced into a marriage with a British peer, and it was a miserable marriage. She wasn't physically abused by her husband. Although, like, it's not like she was necessarily consensual when they were having sex, but the point was, like, he wasn't, like, violently, like, hitting her or those things, but he was very demeaning to her. He considered her a filthy American, even though, like, her family was what saved his dukedom, basically, the money she brought in and everything. And she was basically just a pawn for him to manipulate, and he would, if she displeased him, he would like lock her in their home, and he would demean her. So it was emotional manipulation and abuse. So she was abused, and part of this book is actually her coming to terms with that. And one of the things she's doing to come to terms with that is she's trying to, discover her own sexuality. She's never had a good sexual encounter. None of them with her husband were good. And she's tried to have a couple other interactions with men since then, and they haven't been right. So the thing with her, she obviously needs a lot of trust for it to work for her. So what kind of the inciting thing for this one is we have Jacob, who is the half-brother of one of the other heroes in this. Like, his mother was the mistress to a peer. And he loved, like, his father loved his mother, but he was never super loved by, like, the way Jacob describes it at one point is that, like, he was the cost for his mother to, like, be with him. Because she's like, if I'm going to be the mistress and not get to be, you know, your wife, like, I want children, I want something of my own. So there's Jacob, and I think he has 2 sisters too, and, like, he very much knows that, like, him and his sisters were not really wanted by his father. It's not that he hated them or despised them, but, like, he loved his mistress. He loved her, and he knew to keep her happy, he had to give her these things. But his mother was, you know, shunned by society. She pretty much gave up everything to be the mistress to this man. And she loved him. Like, she didn't regret that, but she gave up a lot. And anyway, so all of these things are things that have scarred Jacob, and he is a self-made man to a good degree. It's not that he doesn't have benefits of being the bastard son of this guy, but he wants something that's his own. And he has a good relationship with his half-brothers, who were the, you know, heirs, because they had their own damage in their books where, like, they didn't feel loved by their dad because they knew that he loved his mistress. So there's just a lot of messed up stuff, and we've seen this happen. But Jacob, he's a great guy. He is, like, a bit of a player, but he's not, like, a slimy type one. And his ventures, he wants to own clubs, and Camille has been around him quite a few times because she's friends with, you know, the heroines of other books, and he's the half-brother of this, and she's thought they had kind of a good connection, so she actually propositions him because she thinks he is someone she would enjoy sex with, and he thinks he would enjoy sex with her too, very much so, but he's very conscious of the fact that, like, this could ruin relationships if it went badly, and so he says no, and so she's pretty embarrassed by that, but she also is like, well, okay, well, I'll find someone, but of course he's like, well, I don't want you to just find anyone, and she's like, I am going to explore my sexuality, I want to find a way to do it, so would you like it to be you, or would you like to be someone else? It's that kind of thing. So I ended up enjoying this quite a bit. Now, the third act conflict of this was foreseeable to me. I wouldn't consider it completely a miscommunication because the hero doesn't fully understand what he wants, but it has that thing where, like, he is the one who kind of causes the third act situation here, but he's also the one who fixes it, and he fixes it in a beautiful way of just, I'm going to remove every obstacle. We're going to be together. And so it won me back over a little bit. So this was a 4.5 star for me. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. This, of course, has trigger warnings for, like, domestic abuse and, like, gaslighting and stuff. We don't have too many scenes of that, like, shown in detail or whatever. And then I would also like to say that I don't have this listed under kinks, but it does have, like, unique sexy things. I love this one. Definitely has the, like, healing sexual things, and, like, first time she's had an orgasm with someone else, and just those really beautiful moments that they have together while he's helping her explore their sexuality. So I love it. All right, then I read another arc, and this one is out on, I don't even know, I've seen different things. It's the 6th or the 9th or the 7th. I'm actually not sure. But it was Dear Grumpy Boss by Julia Wolf. So this is book 1 in her Harder They Fall series. And guys, I gotta tell you, I'm going to love this series, okay? I am going to love this series. I can tell you right now. So this one is a office romance. I've actually already talked about this in my February wrap-up because it was one of my favorite books of February. So there's that. This is an office romance, plus-size heroine, brother's best friend, forced proximity, all these things. So our heroine in the beginning gets very much, like, we'll just say she breaks up with her boyfriend, and this breakup was, like, he was very petty, and and he was a loser. Her boyfriend was a loser, and she ghosts him. She reaches out to her brother, who he is a very well-off businessman. Both him and his friends are, actually, and she's very close with her brother. They have a beautiful relationship. Her brother is only, like, 4 or 5 years older than her, but he was her guardian for a few years because their father died when they were young, and then their mother was just not there. Like, she was a bad mother, and so he was the one kind of, like, looking out for her, and then became her guardian when that happened when her mother died. And so Elise, that's her name, she reaches out to her brother and he helps her ghost this guy. Like, she literally moves states and gets a job at Weston, who is the best friend and the boss of this company. It's actually like an outdoor wear and like outdoor equipment and stuff company, sustainable clothing company, all these things. There's some good business stuff in this. And he has been best friends with her brother since they were teens. He was friends with her. And she had a huge crush on him when they were young, but when he went away to college, she very much was like, I have to shut it down because I'm not going to pine after this man forever. But he really cared about her then too, but he wasn't going to make a move because he's her brother's best friend. And he also was, you know, I mean, he's only 4 years older than her, but when she was a teenager and he was in his 20s, it was like, I'm not going to do anything about it. And now she's working at his company. And he goes out of his way to try to make her feel comfortable being there. But she's very much like not friends with him anymore. And she wants us to be very professional. And so him sending her flowers and leaving these little notes for her, she like does not appreciate it. And he's like, how do I get through to her that I want her to be comfortable or whatever? But their sexual tension, of course, bubbles over, and then it becomes kind of a scenario where, like, they're kind of hiding their relationship from her brother for a certain amount of time, and also he is a very important businessman, and his company goes through something during this book, and that is what led to our conflict, which almost had me taking a star off, okay? Because number one, this was a conflict that very much is telegraphed. Like, the conflict for this is very much telegraphed from a certain point in the book. I was like, oh, this is going to be the third act conflict. I know it's going to be. Because they get together pretty, like, around the 50% mark. And he's a very possessive. They are very, like, hot. Like, there's some good, sexy times in this book. Like, great. Like, he's obsessive. He is very protective. He is, I want to be around her all the time. And I like how it is because she will laugh it off sometime, but she also is very much like, I love that he's obsessed with me. However, when it comes to his business is very important, and he very much feels the weight of all the people that work for him and the lives that he's responsible for by providing employment for them. And so when the third act conflict comes and he makes a pretty big misstep, I felt that, number one, that he did mess up and we saw it coming, but also the heroine, like, I didn't like that aspects of, because she doesn't move when this happens, but she does aspects of the ghosting that she did to her previous boyfriend to him. And I was like, bitch, you cannot do that to him. Like, this is a completely different thing. So I was getting pretty frustrated. And I was like, Julia Wolf, what are you doing? What are you doing? I was loving this book so much. And then his grovel, and not just a grovel, because he's a billionaire, they have a lot of great ways to grovel, but he makes changes in his life to prove that he will not make the same mistakes again, and they are changes that I'm like, this is legit, I believe this. So I ended up giving it a 5-star. Again, like, this was an arc, so I probably did round it up, just because I love Julia Wolf and I love what she does. I love the representation in her books. And this book did give me all the feels. And it might not bother some people as much as it bothered me. But I appreciated this book a lot. So I gave it 5 stars. It was a 3.5 on the spice scale. Trigger warning for some fat shaming. But also, like, this was really spicy and fun. There aren't really specific, like, kinks for this one, besides, like, there's some praise kink majorly happening in here. So there's that. All right, then also, I finally finished a book that I started quite a while ago, and also that I've been meaning to read for ages now. And so I finally listened to Say It's Forever. This was one of the books that I got signed at Wanderlust. And also, Valentine PR actually sent me book 4 in this series recently. And I was like, oh crap, I should catch up to these books. Like, I should catch up to these. But I had got these at Wanderlust because these covers are gorgeous. And I'd been meaning to. And I had the audiobooks. Also, like, the back is beautiful too. I just love them so much. So, this is book 2 in the Redemption Hill series. It's not really a biker series, even though, like, all the guys, like, their father was, like, a part of one. But the brothers aren't really anymore, and this hero, like, owns a mechanic shop, and the heroine, whose name is Salem, she's a single mom, and she's on the run, and she moves to this town to stay with her brother and her grandmother, and she has her daughter with her, and the person that she's on the run from is gonna catch up to her. Like, that's what the plot of this is. The hero also has a pretty dark past. Like I said, him and his brothers aren't involved in anything bad anymore, but they used to be because their father was, and they made a break away from that quite a few years ago, and then they moved to Redemption Hills, and, like, this is their, you know, redemption story, whatever. But there is a very interesting connection with the heroine and who she's running from, and the hero's past that I thought was just like, whoa, it kind of blew my mind. Also, there's something about A.L. Jackson's writing, and see, I've read the first book in this series, and that one was also very beautiful, but she writes lyrically, and that I can handle that when I listen to it, but when I read it, it feels cheesy. But she's definitely very talented with that. And if you like poetry, or you really like that kind of, like, beautiful writing, like, this is very good. Like, her men are all very soulful because of how the stories are written. But it can be a bit distracting. It can get a little long-winded. There are times where I'd be like, skip a little bit, whatever. But the core of the story was very beautiful. It was very painful, though. This involves, like, death of a child, loss of a child, domestic abuse from, like, what happened to the heroine. So yeah, there was some intense themes in here. And yeah, A.L. doesn't really have, like, trigger warnings in her books either. So I just want to make sure about those. Those are there. And she may start adding those sooner. I mean, this one came out, was it 2 years ago now? Or maybe it was just a year. Yeah, it was just last year. So I do kind of wish she would put some trigger warnings in these, because, I mean, you guys know, like, death of a child is a huge one for me, and the domestic abuse, I feel like there should have been some warnings for those, but this was still really beautiful. I gave it 4 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale. Ooh, also the hero is an artist. I really liked that. He is a painter, and there are a couple times where he paints her, and not even in a sexy way, like, it's just how he shares his feelings, so that was great. So those were the rest of the books that I'd read in February, and now we have the March ones. And I started March off by finishing up a fan fiction that I'd started, and this was called Debaucery. It's supposed to be debauchery mixed with sorcery, so it's like Debaucery, and it's by Desert Sea. I've read a few of their works before. They usually do Hermione works, so this was a Severus and Hermione, and this was interesting. I'm a bit conflicted about it, I won't lie. I gave it 4 stars, but I don't know. This was interesting. But the plot of this one is that literally, like, Snape is a slut. Like, he's a man whore. He's dealing with a lot of his, like, because he's seen as the hero of the Wizarding War. That's where we're at. It's a few years after that. I think Hermione's working for the Ministry. I don't know. And he is too, in, like, a liaison manner. I don't know what he is, but he's a man whore. He's a man whore. And so we see him having multiple interactions with women. Usually they're very, like, BDSM involved, and he's just fucking his way through anyone who's interested. He will. We see him with Ginny in this at one point before. So it was very interesting. And Hermione's just really disgusted by him to begin with, because he's very just like any random person, and, like, you get frustrated with him too. It's supposed to be because he's hiding a hurt or whatever, but I mean, he treats these women horribly, and then it's just like, bye. And I was like, I don't like looking at him this way. But then Hermione's the one who will get him to stop doing all those things. But it's interesting because, like, they end up like, not on the run, but, like, in hiding together, and it's when they're in hiding together that he finally starts opening up, and she's opening up, and then they finally, like, sleep together, and then they're like, no, we're the ones that are supposed to be together. So, I don't know. It was quick. It's not like it was super long, but it also, I just didn't like how slutty he was. I don't know another way to say it. Snape was a slut in this, which maybe you'll find interesting. I thought the Edgewood's character was very much like broken bad boy. And he's not like as serious as he is in some. I don't know another way to put that. But yeah, I give it 4 stars. It's 4 on the spice scale. And trigger warnings for like sex, not with the heroine. Like a lot of it. So there's that. All right, then I listened to Curled Up with the Earl by Amy Rose Bennett. I also want to share it because while I was listening to this book and Mother of Death and Dawn, I wanted to share the cross-stitching project that I finished. So I have been doing cross-stitch for the last month and a half or so, basically since the beginning of the year. I wanted something to help me focus on audiobooks again because I just hadn't been in the mood for them. And so I've been doing these little cross-stitch projects, and I really associate the project that I'm working on with the books I'm reading while I'm doing it. So I just wanted to share that. While I was listening to this Amy Rose Bennett and Mother of Death and Dawn, it's when I was working on this little bee. So this is my little bee here. He's so cute. I just wanted to show him off because I share that with my patrons a lot and I put it on my Instagram, but I don't share it all the time. Anyway, so I had received an ARC of this book from Edelweiss, and then NetGalley actually had the e-ARC available, and I was like, this is perfect because for historicals, I very much like to have an audiobook if I can. I read a lot of ARCs of historicals and then you don't get those. So this actually came out on the 7th though. And I missed it because I was on vacation. It's at Universal Studios. And this was really cute. So I hadn't read the first book in the series, but I own it. I definitely will. But I'd heard some great things about it from my friends. So when I saw that the ARC was available, I was like, what the heck? Let me snag it. And so this one is about our heroine, Lucy Bertram. And her father is an eccentric botanist, Sir Oswald. And then she is kind of being pushed into a marriage from her father to this guy who seems kind of slimy. So that's happening in the thing. But then we have a covert agent for the crown, William Lockhart, who's the Earl of Kyle, and he's undercover as a groom at her family home. And so there's a really great meet cute at the beginning for these two, and she starts to fall for her groom, not knowing that he's an earl. And the reason why he's undercover, we should say that, is that there was someone who had been poisoned who had opposing views to some men that her father was associating with. And there have been threatening letters to Charles Darwin that if he doesn't change his stance on evolution and stop spouting his heretical ideas, that he'll be next. And so Will goes undercover to try to find out if it was her father who did it or whatever. So it also turns out that Lucy actually knows a lot about this stuff as well, and she's actually helped / actually straight up written some of the papers that her father has been credited with and stuff like that. Not that her father is incapable of doing it. Her father is very smart as well, but some of her papers she's had to publish under her father's name and that kind of thing. So her and Will start to fall for each other, and there's that mystery about who's actually trying to kill him and what's going on. And the thing that she needs Will's help with, and what she asks him to help her with when she thinks he's still the groom, is that her brother Monty has disappeared. We don't know where he went. And she wants her brother to help convince her father to not make her marry this guy. She's like, if I have my brother's backing, he'll help convince my dad not to marry this guy. So, yeah, I like the mystery of this. This was fun. The narration was really good. I liked that when the reveal comes about who he is, there wasn't a big dramatic to do about it. They had a really good connection and they communicated very well. And I really liked that. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It didn't have quite the spark or the pull that I wanted. Whenever I stopped the audiobook, it was easy to stop it. So this book took me like 3 days to get through, which I'm just being honest, like usually with historicals, which we're going to get to one in a little bit, that like I couldn't put it down. Like I had to finish it immediately. And this one was just sweet. Like I'll definitely read more Amy Rose Bennett. Like I said, I have the first book in the series. I liked seeing a hint at her friends. I'm excited for their books. So yeah, this was a good time. I gave it 4 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. Trigger warnings in this book involve, there's a religious zealot in here who was so frustrating. I wanted to punch him in the throat. And then there is some homophobia, and I won't tell you who it's against, but we'll just put that out there. All right, then I read Of Heists and Hexes by S.L. Prater. This was on my TBR as a book recommended by one of you guys. So I was highly anticipating reading this. I have read an S.L. Prater before and it was okay. And this book is in a different series, but it kind of connected with it. Like it's in the same world where like there's these witches and then there's these priests, but they're like, a priest isn't necessarily like a religious order. It's like kind of militarized-ish. I don't know, whatever. And these witches are like illegal if your magic isn't bound or you're not married off to one of these priests. And so this is also like a Robin Hood retelling, and our heroine is the Robin and our hero is the Sheriff of Nottingham. And yeah, this begins with her kind of turning herself in / getting captured by him, and they have this amazing connection in the beginning. In fact, it's a connection that might even be a bit magical, and he knows that if he turns her over to the authorities, she's going to be pushed into a forced marriage. That's what happens to these witches, and he just like doesn't want that to happen to her, but then he has his, he has his duty. So it was interesting. Also, the ebook does have illustrations in it. I assume a paperback would as well. So that was cool. There was some cool drawings throughout the book. Some of them semi-spicy, but it was cute. I love whenever there's illustrations in a book. That's fantastic. But this ended up falling kind of flat for me, and I feel bad. A couple of my friends were very excited for me to read this, but it just fell a little flat for me. They were separated a lot in this book. Like there's this connection between them, so when they're apart, they feel drawn to each other, but they were just very separate. Also, it's very much from the point of view of the hero the whole time. Like we only find out stuff about the heroine as she chooses to share it with us or as the hero figures it out. And it was in third person too, so that even felt more separate from him, I guess. So I don't know. It kind of fell flat for me, and I found myself skimming, even though this book was only 250 pages. I just wasn't sucked into it. So this one was a 3-star for me. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. There is some bondage involved. There's some ropes involved that were fun. And I definitely could see this book working for a lot of people more than it worked for me. And at this point, I don't think I would consider really reading much more by this author, because this is the 3rd book that I've tried. And the 2 that I did finish were both like 3-star books. So I don't know if I would, but it's a very interesting world, and it was cool to read like a gender bent Robin Hood. All right, then I got to read the arc of Mafia Target. I was absolutely thrilled that this showed up on my Kindle a day early as well. And so I started this book on, when did I read this in one sitting? I read this in one sitting on Thursday. Yeah, on Thursday is when it was dropped. And it got dropped really early in the morning. So I was just like, fuck the rest of my schedule. We are reading Mafia Target. This book comes out on the 10th or the 14th. It might be the 14th. Dang it, I don't have it written down. I think it's the 14th because I think it was like 2 weeks until it was going to come out when I read it. This is book 4 in the Mafia series by Mila Finelli. This one is a romance. It's a bisexual hero and a gay hero. And this is about Julio, who is the son of Fausto and friends with Frankie in the first 2 books anyway. And it has been 4 years since everything that happened in Mafia Darling, and is kind of concurrent time, or like a little bit around when Mafia Madman is happening. Now, if you've read Mafia Madman, you know that Enzo did something naughty before he was with Gianna, and he hasn't stopped it yet. So that's where I think, like, there's some time jumps in the beginning of this because it involves the assassin, Alessio, like, stalking Julio, and there's a few, like, jumps that have to do with that. Some, like, time jumps while that's happening, because, you know, Julio is moving himself around, so he can't be caught. And so I think that the way that would overlap is that Enzo, at some point during that, is when he, like, kidnaps Gianna and, like, all that stuff happens. That happens on the boat and everything. Her name is Gianna, right? Gia. Let me correct myself. Gia. I'm sorry. I wanted to say Gianna because I was talking about Bound by Hatred the other day. So Gianna, Gia. Anyway, so there's some overlapping with that. And the thing is that Alessio becomes kind of obsessed with Giulio and watching him in the way that he does, because Giulio can't risk having a lover again, because, again, if you've read the previous books, you know that he was finally able to, like, be with his partner, and then his partner was killed. And whether that his partner was the target or whether he was, he's like, well, I can't risk having a lover again. And so he only has, like, one-sided transactions in club. Not even transactions. Like, he finds a man, he lets that guy get him off, and then he's out of there. And one of these scenarios, Alessio approaches him, and they do that. And then, and this happens right in the beginning, he asks for a photo of the man who's stalking him, and he realizes it's the guy that he just face fucked the night before. And so he's like, oh my God, this man was this close to me. But it's too late for Alessio. He is hook, line, and sinker into Giulio, and he might be lying to himself a lot about it, but he's obsessed with him and he wants him, and it was really, really good. Like, I loved it. I love how they end up, I won't explain it, but how they end up in a forced proximity scenario and are like, let's have a truce so that we can just fuck each other's brains out for this long. There's some great, Giulio is definitely, like, more dominant, but they definitely kind of, like, trade that back and forth a little bit. There was degradation. Oh, wait, where did I write it? Yes, there was degradation, public sex, voyeurism, some DNS, like, good sexy stuff. Mila Finelli knows how to put it in there, okay? Like, it's good shit. The only issue that I had was I did not like the conflict in this. And not enough to, like, bomb the book. But there's something that comes out, right? There's a secret that comes out that I thought was pretty obvious. Like, I don't know another way to say it. I feel like it should have been kept more of a secret, maybe, like, even from us than it was. Because the thing that causes these two to have a third act breakup, because there is a third act breakup in this one, the thing that causes it, like, I feel like it was really obvious, and that someone, and again, not pointing fingers, should have realized that this was fact. And so then when they find out the info, it's like huge betrayal. Like, oh my God, I'm so betrayed. And like, I never want to see your face. If I see you again, I'll kill you. And I'm like, you aren't using your logical brain, because even if the author hadn't told me this, like, I knew that this had happened, and you knew that this is a anyway, I'm dancing around it because this book isn't out yet. So it kind of pissed me off, because I was like, that is not where the conflict should have come from this, because it makes the one character look really short-sighted, in my opinion, that they didn't assume that. I don't know why to say it. These are both very smart men, and that made them look dumb. And I was like, I think you can do better. Like, the things that keep people apart in the other books in the series are like, they make sense, you know? Like in Mafia Madman, Enzo wants to kill her brother-in-law, and he kidnapped her. Like, he needs to work that out first, right? So anyway, but the grovel was good, the reconnection was good, and it gave me so many fuzzy feelings when we were getting our HEA for this. And there's hints at what the next book might be about. There isn't an announcement for that yet. I assume it'll probably come with the release date. But in the epilogue, there's definitely a hint at like what the next one will be. And yeah, so I gave it 4.5 stars. I rounded up to 5. I'm definitely still recommending this. Like, it's still, the thing is I still probably like Mafia Darling and Mafia Madman like more than this one though. But I mean, I like this one more than Mafia Mistress, if that makes sense. So anyway, 4.5 stars, 4 on the spice scale. I told you what the kinks are. There we go. Let's get to my 2 6-star books of the week. Okay. I had the best fucking time with these books in the last 2 days. It was amazing. So I finally got to read, because finally, it just came out on the 28th. I read Hyacinth by Minerva Spencer / SM La Violette, and this is the next book in the Bellamy Sisters series, and this is about Hyacinth. She is a card sharp, and she is in London with her sister Selena. So I think these are the 2 oldest sisters, whereas Phoebe was the youngest sister. And this book is taking place at the same time as Phoebe. So these 2 girls, they were sent to London because they're supposed to, well, Selena is the prettiest of the Bellamy sisters, and so she's staying with her aunt, and she's supposed to try to find a husband, because where we are currently at with everybody, like, the father is in debt, they're gonna lose their home, all that's happened. What happens in Phoebe is a self-made businessman ends up like renting out their home and then marries Phoebe and like saves them. But that's happening concurrently with this. So the events for 90% of this book, like, we don't know that that's happening. So Hyacinth is a card sharp. She's 23 years old. She has taught herself to be very, very good at different card games, and she has been winning money. And so she has a goal for how much money she needs to raise for her to get her father out of the biggest amount of debt, for her to take care of her friend Charles, who is ill. I will be honest, I don't know what's up with Minerva Spencer having people be ill and making us deal with this with like a chronic illness or a thing, like, I don't know, well, not even a chronic illness, like a horrible thing. Like in the first one, Phoebe, the hero's like his ex-lover is dying, and he has her living in his home with him. And in this one, the heroine's ex-lover is but also her best friend. It's her best friend and ex-lover. They used to, like, they became friends when she was a teenager, and as they, like, grew up, they actually explored sex together. And so our heroine is not a virgin. She is pretty well versed in sex, including some kinky stuff. Like, she has done different things with Charles, and she wants him to have a peaceful end of life. Like, she doesn't know how long it'll be. And he does not die in this book, by the way. That doesn't happen in this. But she wants him to be peaceful. So she has this amount in mind that she will need for her family to be out of trouble, so that she doesn't have to feel guilty about piecing out, I think is what it is. Well, and she loves her sisters. She does. And then to take care of Charles, and then a certain amount of money so she can go traveling, because she wants to go traveling. So she dresses up as a man and goes to play cards. And a couple other things about the heroine. She is touch averse, which I found out in the author's note. Minerva Spencer writes very long, like, letters at the end of her books, which I just love, because she explained that for her, she's touch averse. And this is very difficult because when she this like hurt my heart. She's like, when I go to events, if you don't want to hug someone, they take it as a slap in the face. But to her, it feels like a physical attack to constantly have to be touched by people she doesn't know all day long. And I was just like, that hurts me. Also because I'm a hugger, but also like I have friends who aren't, and we've been able to meet in the middle over the years. And also, once someone knows you and cares about you, you're usually not as touch averse. Sometimes you still are, and your cup gets filled up and you're like, don't touch me anymore. Like, I don't want it. Like, my mom is like that. She always had time for cuddles and love with me, but she would also get to a point where, like, stop touching me. I'm done. Whereas, like, if I am very comfortable and cozy with people, well, and even if I'm not, like, I've met a few of you in real life, and, like, I will hug you. We'll chat. We'll be besties when I meet you. Anyway, I'm getting off the point, but this heroine is touch averse. She also is neurodivergent. It's not like specifically said like what kind or whatever, but she definitely is. And so she definitely she doesn't pick up on like social cues well, and she also doesn't read people well, which is very interesting because she's a card player. She's never even thought about reading other people. She counts cards, which could get her in trouble if someone saw. But I do love the line, because I've always thought this about like poker and cards, is it's like, how is it like your fault if you're good at counting the cards, right? Like however many decks are in play. But you know, if you got caught doing that at a casino, it'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Where it's also like, how is it someone's fault that they're good at doing that? You know what I mean? It's interesting. I've always thought that. I'm like, I don't understand. Because there's a point where the hero is like, you count cards, and if someone saw you doing that, they might like kill you for doing that, especially if you win really big. And she's like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not cheating. I'm just playing. And I was like, girl, I understand. It's so frustrating. But anyway, so she's been doing this, and actually like the hero, you know, they like play cards at a table. She's actually seen him in other places, because he's actually been at some balls where her sister has been out, and he's actually met her before as Hyacinth, but like Hyacinth is a wallflower. She purposely is like that. She's also very plain, or has unique, almost mannish features is how she's described. And Minerva Spencer actually, again, says in her note at the end that she was picturing Tilda Swinton, and she's like, I think she's beautiful, but it's no doubt that she has unique features. And also the heroine is 5'11", which also speaks to me. So she has all these things going for her. She has a very like boyish figure, even at 23. She is tall. She is, you know, oddly featured. She doesn't look womanly at first glance. And so she's been able to get away with dressing as a man for a very long time. We won't go into totally, but she's been doing this for a long time. And when the hero finds out she is a man, which I won't spoil how that, he demands that he always be present when she goes out dressed like that. Because he's like, now that I've been able to see it, other people will figure this out. Like, people will figure this out, and it could put you in danger. And she has ended up in rough spots before. She's been robbed. There's one time where someone figures out that she's counting cards, and like, because they think she's a man, they're, you know, and they're like, if they were to find out that you weren't, like, then you'd be even worse. He's like, you could be raped or killed, and like, it's just not worth it. She also refuses to just let him give her the money, because he's a duke and he totally could. So there's all these aspects going on. But when he finds out she's a woman, she agrees to let him always be there. And then at one point, things boil over and they end up having sex. And oh my God, is it amazing? Not just the sex itself, but she is very blunt, very open. She explains like she's not a virgin. She's had a lover, and they did all the different things. And the hero is just in awe of her. Like, he's stunned by her bluntness and her not being shy and her knowing things. And like, they actually like switch a couple of times. Like, they do some BDSM type things. And there's one scene where she's like they take turns being in control each night. Sometimes the hero's just like, nope, I'm doing it again. And there's one night where she ties him up and crops him, and he just thinks he's won the fucking lottery, because he's been made to feel that he has perversions because he likes that. And it's not even that they do anything super wild in here. Like, it mostly is revolved around bondage and edging and a little bit of like cropping and stuff. But he just sees her as this absolute treasure. And when things come to a boiling point like they do, that is where this kicked itself into a 6-star read for me, okay? Because this is a pretty long-ish book. I don't know. My Kindle said that it was like 600 pages, but I think it's more like 440, which isn't unreasonable, but it's still like longish. So there is a part of this that is like kind of slow, but it's because it's a slow burn, and like, he doesn't know she's a woman right away. And then there's the part where like, they're not just sleeping together right away. He's her friend. Like, this really becomes like a friends to lovers and like a sex deal. And she's like, we can have sex until I'm going to leave London, because eventually I'm going to have enough money and I'm going to leave. Because she's not a gambling addict. She is gambling and playing cards for a very specific reason. And because of the way her mind works, she's like, once I have enough money, I'm done. And it's not that I'll never play cards again, but I'm not like, she always stops when she's down, and she always, like, leaves when she's won. Like, she is not addicted to this, which is great. But where this kicked into 6 stars for me, where it went from just being great to more, is that Hyacinth doesn't feel that she'll be anyone's first choice. And so when a scenario comes about where these two, because here's the other thing, she hasn't told him whose daughter she is. Like, he finds out she's a woman, and she says she's a governess's daughter, between a stable man and a governess. So he doesn't know who he's been sleeping with. So there is a point where that information is going to come out. And he has an initial reaction, which is not to go absolutely crazy about it. But, I mean, spoiler, no spoiler, there's a point where he's like, we need to get married. And she is like, I've forced him into this. Like, what I've done has made it. And she reacts in a certain way. And the way the hero relentlessly pursues her and proves to her, no, this isn't just because I've ruined you or this and that. It's because I genuinely cannot imagine my life without you. I put a couple quotes up on my Instagram, and one of them was just so powerful, where he's like, Hyacinth, please don't break my heart now that I finally know that it can beat again. Because he's a widower. He lost his wife and child in childbirth. There's more to go with that story, but know that for trigger warning, there was a loss of that. But he isn't so much like a grieving widow, but things with his wife weren't good. And so he hasn't been eager to get married again, but he does have an heir who is trouble. His cousin is an heir and he's not great. So he's like, I should get married again and do this. He's 36. The heroine's 23. And she discovers love for the first time, and he discovers it for the first time too, and what it really is. And the way that he expresses it to her, because she doesn't, again, because she is neurodivergent, she doesn't like trust what these feelings are, whatever. She trusts facts and the words that he says to her, and the way that he's able to articulate what she means to him. It was fantastic. So this book was 6 stars for me, for the feels that I got, and also for a really unique and beautiful story. I really loved it. And the setup for Selena is, I'm hyped for that. Like, oh my God, I'm so ready for it. So this was a 6-star read, favorite of the year. This was a 4 on the Spice scale. They had degradation and praise in this book, impact play, and there was BDSM elements with them switching back and forth. So it was so good. It was so good. And then trigger warnings for abusive parent and childbirth death, and the chronic illness of her friend as well. Like, it's not dwelt upon in a super sad way. And there actually is kind of like an HEA with that too, but just put it out there. So, all right. And then the last book that I read this week that I finished last night, that was a 6-star, which I've already mentioned it in this video a couple times, is Mother of Death and Dawn. I'll try to hold this up. Let me just support my elbow because this is freaking heavy. This is the last book in the War of Lost Hearts trilogy, and this was stunning. This series has such high stakes. I was just doing a clip for my Patreons before I filmed this, and I was already starting to gush about this. This series does the cost of magic so well. I again bring up that if you loved the Mistborn trilogy, there are so many aspects of that I think are in here. Plus we get some smoochy. Now this whole trilogy, now having read all 3, it still sits about a 1.5 on my Spice scale. Don't go into this for smutty fantasy. That's not what you'll get. But you will get some nice sprinklings of it in there. And the sex scenes we do have are so emotional and powerful. But they really aren't the most important part, okay? The connections, the relationships between characters, the complexity of the anti-heroes and villains in this series, and again, the cost of magic. That is something that Brandon Sanderson has done lectures on before about what is your magic system and what is the cost to wield it and what what toll does it take? And the different kinds of magic and the different kinds of things we happen in here, like they have serious consequences, both mentally and physically to people. And there is a high risk and a high cost to be able to do some of the things that they do. And we see not only like the magic that is being wielded by our like individuals, but also some of the magic and dark things that some characters delved into that have led us to the point that we're at in this book, and what the cost is to humanity for messing with things that you're not meant to. I was just stunned. Like, really, it's so well done. If you are a fan of high fantasy, if you like complex, intelligent characters who also will just rip at your heart, and there are kind of two love stories going by the time we're in this book. One of them, we don't get as much time with it as we do with Max and Tasana, but both of them tugged at me in completely different ways. There was no one that fully felt evil to me. Everybody has motives that I would believe. Some of them are shallower than others. And there was one tiny disappointment, and I've talked more in depth with this with my friends. There's a character who I thought was very complex and interesting in books 1 and 2. And then when we got to this one, I felt that they were just, it was like, oh, nope, they're a villain. No more complexity. Like, we're just going. Like, we were supposed to remember their complexity from the end, but they did have like a tiny good moment, like right before the end. Like, they were villains, so no surprise. That I was like, oh, there was so much that could have been. But that's also an aspect of the story, like what could have been if we were different, right? The HEA was so sweet. Like, I could cry right now. I also said this in my Patreon clip, like, I knew this is why I need a fantasy romance, even if it's not a spicy fantasy romance, okay? Because these aren't spicy, right? But I need fantasy romance because I need a promise of an HEA. Like, I need that. Again, making the reference, I'm sorry I keep doing it, but like in Brandon Sanderson, like I felt like there was an HEA at the end of the Mistborn trilogy. You know, there was some happiness to it, right? But you don't know that when you're reading it because it's not a romance as the main focus, and so you don't know what's going to happen to your people or if they're going to make it. Whereas when you're reading a fantasy romance and you know that the couple that you love, like, is the end game, you know they're going to make it. Like, I know they're going to make it. And so each time they'd go through something devastating, because where we start out, this book is devastating. Multiple points throughout the book are devastating. I knew they were going to make it to the end and that they were going to live and they were going to have their babies and be peaceful in their home. Like, all those things. Like, I knew that was coming. But the journey to get there never feels certain. Never feels just like, oh, these are just the steps I have to take to get there. And that is what I think is powerful about fantasy romance authors who really make both things equally important, is you don't know how we're going to see our way through the mess and the chaos and the literal death oozing out of the ground in this book, how we're going to make it. But the author makes me believe it, but I also was on the edge of my seat the whole time. So I hope I've articulated that well. Highly recommend this series. Highly recommend the audiobooks. I'm just so impressed with these. I can't wait to read all the other stuff. She has a novella coming out. I'm going to be reading the first book in the Naxia series this week. I want to read everything she does because this was just so well crafted and put together. It's absolutely stunning. So this had to be a 6-star book. This trilogy overall, I would give 6 stars. I gave the first one 5, these two 6. Like, I would give the trilogy as a whole 6 stars. But you got to work for it. This isn't, you saw how big each of these books were. Like, there's a total of, what is it? It's like 500, 600, 700. Like, there's almost like 2,000 pages worth of stuff to go through for this. So it isn't a quick fix to anything, for sure. But it was so rewarding. It was so powerful. All the hype for me is justified, and I can't wait to see what this author does next. And I hope you will try her too. And and just enjoy them as much as me. Like, whew, wow. So, all right, so there we go. That is everything that I read this week, along with the 2 6-star books that I have to add in. So happy about it. It was such a great reading week, and I can't wait to see what's next. We have the Romance Takeover Readathon starting on Monday. Check that out, whether you're here on YouTube or on Instagram. There will be a lot more shared on Instagram, but I'm trying to share some stuff here on YouTube too. Make sure you check out my YouTube stories so you can see stuff about that. There will be reading spurts happening on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then our wrap-up show will be next Sunday evening. So thank you so much for watching this, friends. It means so much to me. Whether you support me monetarily or you just watch and like these videos, all of it helps out, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.